Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Hi, Tim.
Hi. I guess that's a yes. How are you?
Good. We are just going to, it's 1:30, we're going to call the meeting to order of the Cumberland County Finance meeting, and we will begin with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Reader,
Here.
Commissioner Foschi,
I'm here.
Commissioner Eichelberger.
So next is public comment. I don't know if anyone in the room is here for public comment or other events. Are we seeing anyone online, Lauren, that if you are online and would like to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature? Nope. All right, hearing none. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes from the August 7th meeting. I'm going to move to approve. I will second. It's moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. 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 Very good. We will go on. The next big thing, and this is always the best part of these meetings, is the acknowledgement of a 30-year employee. Come on, Brian. And Bob, you want to come? Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Come on in.
Come on down.
Won't be able to see me.
I'll let you make the official presentation. Right. What's your name? Levi. Nice to meet you, Levi. So Brian, I have the pleasure of delivering to you your 30 years of service award. And it is a pleasure to know you and to work with you. And I just want to thank you for those times you've let me sit with you and your wife at events. Very nice. But we are so proud to have you on our team. You are just an unbelievable public servant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I say a few words?
Yeah, please.
Certainly 30 years is quite an achievement, to say the least. 30 years, I mean, there's so many things I could say about Brian, but I think to wrap it up, dedicated, committed, you're not going to find anybody more dedicated. He's covered our technology systems forever. And 30 years in technology systems is probably somewhere comparative to dog years, at least 60 years worth of effort. Multiple CAD systems, the radio system, running the tower sites in the middle of the night to reset breakers. And thank you for everything you've done. And it's been a pleasure working with you all this time and hopefully many years more. So
yes.
Yeah. Keep up the good work. Thank you. So.
So we will push in a little closer here for a. Come on up, bring up.
You're good. You good there? You all right?
We got one more coming up here.
Let's just say, yeah. I'll switch you.
Okay.
How's that? We'll fit many in.
Perfect.
All right.
Can you fit us?
Yeah, I think this looks good. All right, everyone look here. I'm going to take a couple. All right, so
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
nice job.
I was resisting the urge to help you by the silly one. So that's what I did with my.
Oh, yeah, do a silly one.
Resisting the urge.
All right. This is not a statement about what's to follow. This is the support of his team. So thank you all for coming out, gentlemen. See you guys.
Thank you.
Would you actually like that? I don't. Yeah. Would actually like that? Okay, I'll see what I can do.
All right, very good. Next we have up PFM Financial Advisors discussing a bond issuance.
So commissioners, today we have Brad Remig and Melissa Hughes from PFM, and Tim Horseman is online with Erica Weibel from Beats Wallace. Today's just a kickoff meeting for the second bond issue for the public safety. So Brad must have a short presentation for you guys.
Well, it's good to see you, commissioners. Thank you very much for having us. We were not naive enough to believe that everyone was here to hear about municipal bonds. We tend to clear a room when it's our turn to speak on it. We have a brief presentation for you to talk to you about the next financing, as Ron mentioned. Couple of things you'll see on the screen, or maybe you have in front of you. I think we put hard copies in front of you. This first colorful page is an interest rate chart. It shows different parts of what's going on in the municipal bond market. Basically, if there's the top chart is what we call a yield curve. And the fact that the blue line is below the red line, I think it might be, not everybody realizes that interest rates are below historic averages. Everyone's been hearing about inflation, mortgage rates being high, things of that nature. But in the municipal bond world, we're still, if you look at about a 30-year history, we're still below historic averages. The middle chart basically graphs that the 10-year rate. And again, you can see here on the screen, when 2/3 of the time rates have been higher than this. So we're actually in the bottom third of the market, which I think is interesting. The bottom chart shows the 10-year rate for the last year and a half or so. And you'll notice as you get to the right, the line going down. And that's really what's been happening in the market lately. You may have heard, the PPI came out Wednesday, showed that it seems like inflation is slowing. CPI today came in as expected. There were no surprises. I do believe people think that in next month, the Federal Reserve is going to reduce interest rates, whether it's 1/4% or 1/2, we don't know yet. But the market is factoring this in already. Just so you know, when it comes to borrowing long-term, the market prices this in. So we're seeing the benefits of something that hasn't already happened yet. Actually, to be honest with you, we're seeing the rates come down. So it seems to be a good time for the county to be considering this next financing. The next page is a bunch of words, which I'm less comfortable with. I'm more comfortable with numbers, but there are a couple things that we just wanted to bring up to the commissioners as a reminder. One of the things is that when you borrow the money for this project, you can borrow the money at a tax-exempt interest rate, which is a lower interest rate than corporate bonds are. So that's a benefit, but there are some things that come with it. First is that you have to, in the top kind of couple bullet points, talk about you have to reasonably expect to spend money within 3 years. Okay, so that's one thing that you have to kind of meet that test. And I'm sure Tim and Eric will make sure we're dotting all those I's and crossing those T's as well. And then also that there's a due diligence test where you're going to proceed with a project in due course. Things do get hung up. We understand that, but that you have full intention of doing the project. The second set of bullet points is something we haven't had to talk about in a while, and that's arbitrage rebate. And if you remember what that is if you borrow money tax exempt, and let's just call it 4%, you're able to reinvest it at 5%. Typically, the general rule is you can only keep the 4%. The other difference needs to go back to the federal government. It's not a bad thing because you're earning as much as you can earn. You just got to keep track of it. And I know Ron and Dana and their team has done a great job historically of tracking that and making sure it's monitored and so forth. So we just want to bring that up. There are some exceptions to the rules depending on how you spend the money. There might be a way to keep that extra 1% depending on how the project gets lays out and how the monies go out the door. So there are some exceptions, but generally we haven't had to talk about this in a while, but now we're in that situation.
And ultimately, it might be less impactful on the borrowing that we're going to do coming up and more just retrospectively knowing it impacted the one we did previously, right? It would have been more impactful on that one, given that the market largely expects that short-term rates will come down. So we'll borrow at maybe 4, short-term rates are at 5. If you believe the market, which who knows if that's what will come true, but if you believe the market, right, we'll come back to short-term rates at something like 4 again. So you might not have that spread for such a long period of time like we did on the 23 bond.
The next concept is something a little bit different than we've done in the past. And we're seeing more and more people shift to this process, largely because the volatility in the market is such that if someone puts a bid in, because typically the county has done auctions and competitive bids for their bonds, typically the market likes to hear that they are going to be awarded or whatever you call it, the same day. Historically, what we have done at the county was take a bid on one day and come to a commissioners meeting the next day and then ask the bidder to hold their bid for almost 24 hours. And a lot of things can happen overnight, happen, early the next morning, things of that nature. So what people have been considering, we wanted to bring this idea to you, is approving instead of an ordinance at a regular meeting with all the final bid results, is you pass what's called a parameters ordinance. So you set forth the parameters under which the bonds could be awarded to a bidder, so that if those documents are in place, we could technically award the bid to the low bidder that same day, later that afternoon. And we could always have a special meeting, but typically, in order to, your typical meeting schedules, I think you meet, on a Thursday at 9:30, we'd be asking someone to hold their bid for almost 24 hours, so forth. So people are considering this type of an ordinance. It also allows us to schedule an auction at a time maybe you didn't have a meeting scheduled. So for example, if you had a meeting on a certain day, and guess what? The CPI was supposed to be released that day. You might want to avoid that meeting day, kind of have some more flexibility as to when you conduct your auction. So we're seeing more and more local governments in Pennsylvania move to this process. So they get the board approval and then do the auction. And then what would happen ultimately is we would share the results with the county, presumably with you all, later that afternoon. And you could see what the numbers are. And then what happens is an addendum is signed accepting the proposal to make sure it fits within the parameters. It fits within what the commissioners were expecting for. And so that's not, by doing the parameters ordinance, you haven't given us, let us do whatever we want to do, I'll call it for lack of a better word, still comes back to the county for review. Just, it would not have to be done at a scheduled meeting, because you would have had approved everything in accordance with the Debt Act. Tim, should I pause there, or Erica, did I describe that okay?
Yeah, hi, Brad. Thank you for that. Yep, you hit the nail on the head. I'll just take a quick moment to say good afternoon, commissioners, and my apologies for not being able to be there in person. As I know some of you have heard, my wife and I had a baby last month, so I am working from home right now. But yeah, Brad put it all out there correctly, and we've done many of these parameters ordinances over the years. I would say the majority of our clients enter the market this way because of the flexibility it provides, as Brad indicated.
I would say something north of 90% of issuers in Pennsylvania do it this way.
I can't believe this flexibility hasn't been available on some level before. Has it been available?
It has.
Okay.
It has, but typically, one of the nice things was we haven't done an issue in a couple of years, right? And it just seems like the market's becoming more and more volatile, and we're seeing
you used
more.
to have your meetings a little bit earlier in the day. Like it used to start at 9, and we would be the first thing at 9, and we'd send the email like right away. And 30 minutes does not sound like a lot, but in bond world it is. Because that's kind of, you're full into the next day, right, by 9:30 in bond world.
And bidders are getting used to being awarded same day,
Right.
just becoming more comfortable. And I do believe that if they know that is going to happen, that they're not going to build any cushion in to their bid, in case something happens that was to happen. I don't think we've experienced that.
Really, realistically, the parameters that we would set, it's really only on the upside.
Mhm.
It's not really as much
Right.
on the downside.
Right. Now, we would probably, for example, if you were looking at a $15 million financing, the parameters ordinance would probably be for a higher number. Okay, call it 18 million. Because when we get bids in order to structure the final structure the way the county wants it, Melissa has to have flexibility as to where she puts bonds amortizing, scheduling payments. So when these ordinances are done, we can't, to not to exceed in all facets of that bid. So ultimately what would happen is if the bids came in and it was 15 million, I think, and I don't want to speak for Tim and Erica, they would typically follow up with the state and say, guess what? We didn't use 18, we used 15, so please take that 3 off the county's debt statement. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when the bid comes in, you still have even if it's within the parameters, you haven't committed to it. Meaning you still get to look at the numbers, you still get to see if this is, even if it meets the parameters, but it's not what you expected, you would have the right to not accept it.
Okay.
You haven't
We would
committed.
talk to you about what that means. I mean, rejecting a bid isn't something we recommend very often, right? It has to be a pretty extreme situation, because otherwise we would just tell you to not go into the market. Right? We would say, just wait.
You pretty much know.
Yeah.
Pretty much know. So just,
Can I also add, and by accepting the bid, it would be one commissioner approving it, right? And so it's not necessarily gonna come forward in a formal meeting. It'll be like you're active in the bond. We usually sit and watch the bond auction. You get the documentation, but the chair, I believe, is the one would be actually signing off on it.
right.
Like, we would let you know, all right, this is the time when we need you available for, we give you generally like a 1 hour period, because it is an active process. And it depends on how long the counterparty takes to get us what we need, and then to get Tim what he needs, so that you can then give authorization ultimately. But on the day that we pick for the auction, we'll have like a 1 hour time period to be like, all right, generally this is roughly when we're gonna be able to call you, go over the final results with the bond sale document, just like you're used to seeing. The end outcome is gonna feel similar. It's the steps in between that are different. Does that make sense?
So before we get to the numbers, just we have a sample timeline for you here. This is our first opportunity to talk to you about the bonds and this concept and some numbers. Typically, I think that we see the board authorize us to proceed to go ahead with the financing. Then we would have if you were so inclined to do the parameters ordinance idea, have that maybe in September, October, do the auction sometime in October. Right now, we have a tentative time saved on the internet that I kind of booked. So it's kind of like anything. We're not married to it. It could change, but I like to book it. So I know I have a time slot, but nobody else does. And then we probably close sometime before Thanksgiving. That's kind of what we're envisioning. But we haven't put dates to those meetings yet. So obviously we wanted to hear from you before we made any assumptions. But I booked was just 10.
Because if you weren't comfortable with the parameters, then your other option, you tell us, but would be to have a special meeting at a time that's more cohesive for the auction.
So I'll let Melissa talk about the numbers if anybody has any other questions.
I just, one question as it relates to settlement being in November from our funding and the bills that are being paid. I know we did a refunding resolution. Did that come?
I don't think it is. The
The reimbursement resolution. I'm sorry, I said not refunding, sorry. That's wrong.
We know what you meant.
Yeah, there was reimbursement resolution, so that we've already put that in place, but is this timeline adequate for the bills of the P25 that you expect to?
So we would have the money in time for that one, but we also have the leeway of being able to issue it later if something happens in the market.
Okay.
We don't have to go in this timeline if something happens.
Okay, very good.
So that's what that reimbursement resolution is for us.
And it's the September Fed meeting that everybody's already
Right.
forecasting, but it could
Right.
change to 2 by the end of the year.
In terms of, it'll be interesting to see what the message is.
Okay.
If they're gonna go 25 and what the speak is, or if they're gonna do 50, we'll see. The market, I think, expects that there's gonna be more than just that action in September. But again, one of the things that's nice about the way our market functions is they price this in. So I think a lot of people think if the Fed reduces rates 0.5% in September, are the interest rates on my bonds gonna go down 0.5%? It's not really that market kind of.
The market, it's really interesting to watch. It's very fun on days when it does this. It'll be like normal, and then everybody decides that the Fed is gonna do something different, and in 24 hours, they've already priced it all in. It's like, oh, everybody decided.
Yeah, the muni world can be interesting.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your existing debt service and your existing debt portfolio. Oh, I need to advance. There we go. So the county has an excellent debt portfolio. Relative to other counties your size, you have very little debt. And your average payback, your average amortization is very short. So you can see in the current budget year in 2024, you will pay debt service of about $4.2 million. And you'll stay at that run rate for 4 years. And then you have debt drop-offs built in your portfolio as your old debt pays off. You do have those series of 2022 bonds, which are, the other half of this project. And we amortize those over a little bit of a longer period of time, 20 years, because we match the useful life of what we're financing with the term of the payback, right? That's kind of optimal from a lot of perspectives.
The other thing I'll point out is you see below list call date, that's the date at which you can refinance, prepay without a penalty. Rates are pretty low on the other one, so I'm not sure we'll be here talking about refunding anytime soon, but
At least not on your 16s and 18s. Your 22s, maybe, because we're replacing, when we refund, we're replacing the coupons. Okay. And as you move out the curve with a longer issue, there might be an opportunity there, but that'll be
Someone
years
else's
in the
choice.
future.
Quite frankly.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the decision is today. So on page number 5, we are showing 2 scenarios for borrowing $15 million. And you get the money in these scenarios in your account in November. Okay. In the blue, in column number 5, you can see an estimate. And right now we're a little bit conservative. If you were doing this today, you would do better. But we have interest rate risk until you can lock the rates in. So you'll notice in this scenario, in 2025, you'd have a payment of about $630,000 of new debt service. And then in 2026, approximately $1,175,000. And you kind of keep at that run rate until the end of the 20-year term in 2044. Okay. In the yellow, we said, okay, what if you don't want to step into the debt service? So in the blue, we're stepping into the debt service, bringing a small payment in 2025, and then bringing the full payment online in 2026. What if you don't want to do that? That's what the yellow represents. You notice over the long term, your payments are a little bit lower because you're paying off principal just a little bit faster. And correspondingly, you pay just a little bit less interest. But the trade-off is, from a budget perspective, that may be harder, right? So it's, comparing a little bit less interest to, a little bit more budgetary challenge to bite off that much in 1 year. There's no right or wrong answer between these 2 scenarios. But we would like a little bit of direction on, what the general goal is.
So we're not asking for direction today.
No, not today, but just in general. Just in general. Yeah, no action today.
so you can think about that a little bit and see which one.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make sure that we showed you a couple different choices.
And we'll discuss it next week at our monthly meeting.
I guess the only question I would have related to that is, and I can appreciate the budgetary issues because we certainly have had those and had to be very aggressive about our budget for this year. Just to success, I believe. The step in doesn't impact your spend rate though.
The interest rate you would get on the bond.
When you're funding, your full funding
Yes,
at
you're
the
gonna
same
get all
time
the money
regardless.
up
You're not
Getting a little bit now, a little later. Correct.
bringing down
Get it
your
all.
funding.
Yes.
Okay.
So the major difference is in 25, we would also have a principal payment in option 2. And that is normally how we structure debt. We normally don't postpone principal payments. But we can do option 1 or option 2.
Okay. But yeah, historically, the county has done the yellow. I would say many other issuers do the blue. there's no.
Right or wrong answer.
Right or wrong.
If I guess my perspective is if we go through this process, we know we owe it. We know we have to pay it.
Yeah.
You know, you can pay now or you can pay later. We know,
Absolutely.
pay it, we have to pay it.
Yeah, and how it fits in your planning.
Understand. Thank you though for showing it.
And then, you can see the total debt service in columns 6 and column 8 in either of the various scenarios.
So it adds your existing payments to what these new payments will be, so.
That's all we had. Do you have any questions or additional?
We can discuss it next week. If there's more information we can provide, we'd be happy to provide it after you go through your discussion. More than happy to provide more information.
So I notice on this is mask for rate. Is there any range of what you're seeing and expecting?
I think we've been seeing 20-year deals below 4%, to be quite honest with you lately.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just below.
just below 4%. I think that's Melissa mentioned, we probably have something a little bit higher than that in here, to
We
be
do.
honest.
Okay.
But I think you'd see, so if you did it here and the market didn't change much, we think we'd see something less on this, just to be transparent.
Okay. Yeah, that I appreciate that.
We want to help you plan, right? Because you're heading in, the budget season here. So the goal is to give you something to plan with. And then we'll come back once we've actually sold the bonds and, hopefully on that. And then you can have a few more dollars to do something else with. Have them paid up seconds.
If all else remains equal in 7 years, it gets a whole lot easier.
Correct.
So,
And typically, we do finance the bonds this way. We've occasionally done a wraparound if the market is beneficial that way, and that's very rare. So that's why you see these setbacks, because we haven't done a lot of debt lately. And we're paying off some of the debt. And about 4 years ago, we paid off a substantial amount of debt. That was the original P25, some nursing home funding, and some other, it wasn't P25, it was like 800 megahertz.
but it was a 20-year-old system.
Yeah, and I said this at the beginning, but you have relatively little debt for a county your size. I think very much relatively little debt. I've been doing counties all day this morning. What a delight.
Right.
Well, we'll let you think about this. Hopefully, if there's more information, great. Stand ready to go.
Very good. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the board at this time? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.